A long time ago, way back up in the mountains, there was an old man and an old woman lived up there, and they were real poor. They didn't have much, but what they had was a lot of love in the house. Well, they had gone to church one Sunday morning, and that woman, during the church service, just became impressed. In her heart, she knew it, that Jesus was going to come eat dinner with them that night. She says, when they got back home from church, she says to her husband, says, the Lord's coming to eat with us tonight. She says, I know it. He's coming. She says, I'm going to kill that old chicken we got out in the yard, and I'm going to fix the best meal I can fix for him. Well, her husband, he didn't say nothing because he had learned that she was a very wise woman, and he loved her a lot. And he learned through the years not to argue with her, because when she was impressed with something, she knew it. So she says, when she said that the Lord was coming to eat with him, he believed her. Well, kinda. He kinda believed her. So he went out and killed that old chicken, and they picked it. She got some taters, and she got some corn. She fixed some squash out of the garden. It was the last they had, and she fixed the finest meal that she could fix, and she put that thing on the table, and they waited. Well, supper time come, and the Lord wasn't there, and that old man, he began to wonder a little bit. You know, he says, well, she's never missed before. I believe her. I'm gonna believe what she says. And so he sat and they waited, and a little bit, there come a knock at the door. And there was an old beggar man at the door. And they opened the door up, and she said, well, told her husband, says, well, we got your part, we got my part, we got the Lord's part, but that's all we got. And this poor feller, he's hungry. I'm going to give him my part. And the husband says, well, that's okay. That's all right, if that's what you want to do. So they let that old man in, and they fed him. They fed him her part of the food. Well, that old man, they tried to get him to stay. They said, the Lord's going to come eat supper with us. Stay on with us, and you can talk to him. He says, no. Says, I got to get on my way. The clouds were brewing out there, and I sure do appreciate you feeding me. That means a lot. That just means so much to me. He said I hope God blesses y'all greatly. And he went on his way. Well, it come a thunderstorm outside. It was awful. It was terrible what a storm it come. And a little bit, there was a peck on the door in the middle of that storm, and they opened up the door, and there stood a little old boy, little old orphan child, stood there at the door, and he was sopping wet to the bone. Well, they had some old clothes there in the back, and they got him some dry clothes, and that man says, well, feed him my part. Go ahead, feed him my part, and when the Lord gets here, the Lord will still have some. So they fed that little old boy. They gave him some dry clothes and fed him that old man's part. And they tried to get him to stay too. And by the time he got finished eating, the storm was over, and he says, no, I'm traveling. I got to get over to the next town, and my aunt lives over there, and I'm going to go over there and see her and stay with her. And they said, well, we sure do hope you do well. And they sent him on his way. Well, it was late by then. It was real late. Here come another peck on the door. And they opened it up, and there stood Jesus. And that old woman, she was so happy. And the old man, he said, she was right. I knew it. I knew Jesus would be here. And they said, but Jesus, we don't have much for you. He said there was some people came, and we gave them our parts, but there's just not much left. And the Lord said, well, I've already been here twice. And he said, I sure do appreciate what you did for me. He said, it's time for y'all to go eat. Come on in here. And they went in there in the kitchen, and there was the biggest banquet that they had ever seen in their lives. And there was servants. There's people there to wait on them. And them two old folks and the Lord sat down and ate the grandest meal they'd ever had in their lives. So let this be a lesson to you. As we part from here tomorrow, as we travel on our ways, as you run into folks, help them out. Help pull them up along the way, because it might be the Lord, and he might be dressed up. And that's my stories.